Oh no. No, Elliotte Friedman, come on, man. Come on! Okay, so what we're gonna do in this video is we're gonna dive into the latest written 32 Thoughts article, why the Bruins fired Jim Montgomery, and what's next. Friedman published this about 2 hours ago and dives into some very interesting thoughts, 32 of them to be exact, about the Boston Bruins and their situation in this season's worth of play. The article's pretty interesting, and I think it's worth the read. It goes over the Bruins and how badly they've been, what's been going on, and why Jim Montgomery got fired. There were some comments made by Don Sweeney. The Boston Bruins could not maintain it. We had a 2-1 game in Dallas. First shot goes in, but you battle back. You're in a 2-1 hockey game, and all of a sudden, bang, 3 goals. That's part of the things that bother me as a GM. Where our team can't stay as close-knit as they've been, they can't get through the adversity within a game, and they can't respond from game to game. Sweeney confirmed one thing about Jim Montgomery, that the Bruins and their ex-coach in the final season of his contract engaged in failed extension conversations. Maybe we'll never know the full story, but there are people who believe he was unsure about Boston even before they were unsure about him. The article then talks about some of the new comments from Joe Sacco, the brand new guy who is in the head coaching position. There are guys that are underperforming, etc., etc. Bruins haters were casting spells or mixing elixirs for years, wishing the demise of this long-time power. That's premature. You discount this group at your own peril. But it's fair to wonder if Boston was dragged, kicking and screaming into the new era. This was rarely a noisy team. Private and relatively simple contract discussions became public, and contentious not just in one case but in several. The organization held a line, since broken, on their top salaries. That's not a complaint. Everyone is entitled to negotiate for what they desire. And so, starting everything off, Friedman is diving into an entire thing about Boston, how there are going to be changes on the horizon, hopefully, how this new coach is going to provide new juice for the organization. But with the Boston Bruins conversation in mind, Friedman still goes out there and speculates what could happen next. Take a look at the third thought on today's written 32. Weird idea that may only make sense to me. Nikita Zadorov back to Vancouver. No idea if it's even possible, or if anyone would want it, but he was a good fit and the Canucks miss him. So let's talk about that, shall we? Let's talk about Nikita Zadorov back to Vancouver. Because for me personally, I've been making the videos over the Boston Bruins this season. I've been more inclined to do so because in one of my multiple fantasy leagues, yeah, that's right, baby, I signed up for a few other ones. In one of my multiple fantasy leagues, Jeremy Swayman was my top pick at 4th overall, and he stinks. Somebody get some Febreze and some 99.9% bacteria-killing Lysol in here because it stinks up in this house, and Jeremy Swayman is the one who caused it to go down. My 3 keepers were already terrible because Connor Bedard doesn't do anything, and then Jeremy Swayman, my top pick, is also sucking as well. Yeah, no wonder I decided to go to a whole bunch of other fantasy leagues this year, but I'd been inclined to making videos about the Bruins because of Jeremy Swayman, because of Elias Lindholm, because of Nikita Zadorov, and how these guys had been underperforming to open up the 24-25 season, and it wasn't even close. The Boston Bruins are not getting what they thought they were going to get out of these guys, and we were very adamant in talking about just how poorly they were playing. Nikita Zadorov has been a penalty-taking machine and somebody who has not been holding up his end of the bargain. Jeremy Swayman can't make a save to save his life, although, to be fair, the defense is playing poorly in front of him. And Elias Lindholm got demoted from first-line center to second-line center. He's not producing too many points either. You gotta start wondering, is there a possibility that these decisions were just wrong? And now you consider Nikita Zadorov getting traded back to Vancouver. I'll say this, if you wanted to get it done, you would not be able to do it at full salary. Straight up. The Vancouver Canucks have been accruing cap space this entire year, and they actually ended up doing a bit more of that today by sending Jonathan Lekkerimäki down and calling Max Sasson up. But Nikita Zadorov is making $5 million a year till the end of 2031. The Vancouver Canucks, sorry to say, I don't really know if they can afford that. And it's not like, oh, they can't afford it, they would be terribly over the cap if they did. It's more like, I don't know if this really fits with the vision of what they want to do. You know how sometimes in your bank account, you have a set number that you have in mind that's like your zero number? Like, I have $10,000 in my checking account, and I have X amount of dollars in my savings account. I can pull money from my savings account whenever, but if my checking account goes below $10,000, that feels really bad. That's like my zero number. I feel like the Vancouver Canucks have sort of done this thing with their cap structure where they're building some sort of a leeway that's so big that they have their own zero number too. It doesn't seem like they're in a position to just get guys because they can. It seems like if they have an opportunity to save money, they would want to expand on that. So for Nikita Zadorov, $5 million a year till the end of 2031, I get it. This was kind of the same number that they were offering him initially to have him stick around in Vancouver, but they also were trying to get that number down into the $4-ish something million territory. Whether or not Boston would sell low on a guy they had just signed and to a pretty big contract till 2031 in itself, that's one thing, but at the same time, Vancouver's not going to be an easy team to crack when it comes to getting guys. So for Nikita Zadorov, money-wise, there would need to be some salary going the other way too, probably, just to make it work. Maybe Zadorov and a Desharnais trade or something like that. But ultimately, if you wanted to talk about the role, you wanted to talk about the fit, oh yeah, Nikita Zadorov back in Vancouver, who knows how good that would be, because realistically, Zadorov was okay as a member of the Canucks in the regular season in 23-24. I don't want to say he was anything better than okay, he was just okay, right? He was fine. But in the playoffs, that's when Zadorov came alive. He started scoring a whole bunch of goals, he earned his paycheck, he was really physical, he was one of the best players on the team in the playoffs, and you can say, honestly, the same thing about Elias Lindholm. But for Nikita Zadorov to be in that spot where he just totally took control, these are the kinds of guys that Vancouver wants to have on their team in the playoffs. I'd say the Canucks are guaranteed to make in the playoffs this year. I don't think it's relatively reasonable to assume they're going to miss, but having a guy like Nikita Zadorov on that back end, playing more minutes than Carson Soucy, would be a huge addition. It'd be kind of interesting because Zadorov, look, he's been playing poorly, that's true. But is he playing as poorly as a guy like Carson Soucy is? I'm not really too sure. You could definitely say that Zadorov in 24-25 is still better than Soucy in 24-25, so maybe slot him down and put Zadorov into that top 4 spot, have Zadorov with Myers, have the Twin Towers line reunited, and then have Carson Soucy getting sheltered minutes on the third pairing with Erik Brannstrom as an offensive guy. You can just tell Soucy, hey, you don't need to do anything. You just gotta stay back, play your rock-solid defense, become that rock again, and let Erik Brannstrom do all the heavy lifting offensively. And that way, you don't really need to play much of Vinny Desharnais or Noah Juulsen or even Derek Forbort. There are options here, I'd say. So for the Vancouver Canucks, ultimately it would take maybe a bit of assets to get it working, but I do like the idea of Zadorov coming back over to Van, assuming the salary works itself out, and assuming the Canucks are not going to commit a super high amount of money to this guy coming in. He is signed on till 2031 after all. The Canucks wanted to sign him on till 2030. They weren't able to do it, but at the end of the day, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Elliotte Friedman's 1 of 32 thoughts as to whether or not you could see Nikita Zadorov getting sent back to the Vancouver Canucks in any sort of a trade capacity. Boston fans, what are you thinking about trade returns? I know you guys have been really down in the dumps on this Nikita Zadorov guy, but if a trade is coming, what do you think it would take to get this working? Also, do you think there even is enough value that Zadorov brings for you to say yes to some sort of a trade? Do you think his value is positive? A lot of people have been talking about his negative play. A lot of people have been talking about his lack of point production. A lot of people have been talking about his penalty minutes and his dollar amount. Do all these things combine into an asset that is worth negative value? Do you think the Boston Bruins could say, okay, here's Nikita Zadorov and 20% salary retained alongside of a 4th round pick to Vancouver for future considerations? thank you, Canucks, we got nothing in return, that's what we wanted? Or would you need to get a defenseman back? Like, you get Derek Forbort back, or you get Desharnais back, or whomever else, and then Vancouver maybe either adds, or there's less of an addition there because Zadorov's value is so low. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.